What is Turnkey Lite? If you've been around turnkey world at all for any period of time, you've probably heard people throwing around different terms describing different types of properties. What one person calls Turnkey Lite might be slightly different than what I call Turnkey Lite. As of now, there's not a totally standard dictionary because a lot of these terms are evolving as turnkeys themselves are evolving. So what I'm going to do in this video is explain to you exactly what I mean when I say Turnkey Lite. And if you're buying a Turnkey Lite property, what that entails. So I'm going to do that in 4 different parts. I'm going to tell you what Turnkey Lite actually means. I'm going to tell you why you might want to consider investing in a Turnkey Lite property over a turnkey. I'm going to talk a little bit about the numbers, and then I'm also going to give you some information on how to manage a Turnkey Lite property long term. And then at the end of it, I'm going to link you to a video to a Turnkey Lite property that I toured so you can kind of attach a visual to the things that I'm describing in this video. What does a Turnkey Lite property actually look like? Okay, let's dive in. What is a Turnkey Lite property? So I'm going to start by explaining what a turnkey is. So when you buy a turnkey rental property, you're getting 100% fresh rehab. So anything broken is being fixed, all the CapEx items are being replaced if they don't have, X number of years of life left. And everything's being upgraded. Old countertops, old cabinets, they're getting pulled out, replaced with nicer, fresher stuff, newer stuff. Carpet is probably being pulled out and replaced with LVP. In some cases, you might even be getting granite countertops. The rehab is not only replacing dysfunctional items or things that are broken, it's also replacing old and outdated items. Cool. Great. How fresh and clean and modern. I love it. Now, what is a Turnkey Lite in comparison to that turnkey description? You are absolutely still getting the part of the rehab that involves anything broken, CapEx items, functionality. All of that is being checked on. Anything broken is being fixed or replaced. Any CapEx item without at least 10 years of life on them are being replaced. So the roof, hot water heater, HVAC, if they don't have an extensive amount of life left, they are getting replaced. And again, anything broken and also clean. So obviously, 100% freshly rehabbed turnkey is going to be very clean, but Turnkey Lite is also going to be clean. Think about it this way. Turnkey Lite essentially is the same thing as rent ready. It's in a condition where you could place tenants in it tomorrow and everything be fine. You could not put tenants in your average as-is property where the appliances are going bad, things are broken, there might be holes in the windows, who knows what. That's not what you're getting with a Turnkey Lite. It's not an as-is property because work is being done to it. But it is in a condition where you could place tenants tomorrow. Again, meaning everything is functional, nothing's broken, CapEx items have plenty of life left, and it's a clean, functional property. Great. But why would you want one of those if you could get a freshly rehabbed turnkey? I'm going to give you 3 reasons you might want to consider Turnkey Lites. The most obvious being, they're just going to be cheaper. You can get a Turnkey Lite property, which is a perfectly good and functional rental property, for cheaper than you can get a freshly rehabbed property, obviously. And just so you know, since the beginning of time, people have been buying less than renovated properties and renting them out very successfully. Somewhere in all this turnkey messaging over the last 10 years, people have gotten it in their heads that the only way to be profitable with a rental property is to have the freshest, most modern, upgraded property. It's just not true. People have been renting out less than renovated properties forever, perfectly fine. So it's not a requirement that something's perfectly upgraded and rehabbed in order to be successful. So you can get, again, a perfectly functional rental property for cheaper. That's number 1. Another thing you might want to consider is, as good as I do, if you've looked around turnkeys, you really can't find a turnkey in an A neighborhood, in one of the higher end neighborhoods, or a higher end property that's going to cash flow. By the time it's rehabbed and the purchase price is set accordingly, you're just not going to get cash flow. Turnkey Lites open up the door to buy A properties in A neighborhoods that may not otherwise cash flow. Because you are getting it at a cheaper price, it allows more room for cash flow. So if you've always been concerned with neighborhood or the property type or whatever, this might be your in to be able to get into some of the better neighborhoods. Sure, there's some turnkey lights that are more like C neighborhood or B neighborhood, no problem. But there are A neighborhood options for turnkey lights. So might be your ticket in. The last reason you might want to consider this is, unlike with a turnkey where all of the rehab has already been done, all of the improvements have already been done, at that point, you don't have any control over building your own equity, forcing appreciation. You have to wait on the market to do that for you. There's nothing you can do. You can't rehab it to force that appreciation. With a turnkey light, you're now taking control over that equity build because you have the ability to do things where you're going to force the appreciation. Now, here's the thing to remember. Because it's a rent-ready property and the only difference between Turnkey Lite and Turnkey is the aesthetics, it just looks a little more outdated, you don't have to rehab it. Don't take it to be like, oh, well, then I have to rehab this out. No, don't take it to be a pressure. You can leave it as is. No big deal. But you have the option to upgrade it. We're going to talk about that also. Now let's skip to the numbers, because you might be saying, well, wait a minute. If a property looks more outdated, I'm probably not going to be able to ask as much in rent for the property. You would be correct. But look at it like a quadrant. So we have the purchase price of the Turnkey Lite and the rental amount that you can get on that Turnkey Lite condition. You have the purchase price of the fully turnkey property and the rent that you can get on that property. So 4 different numbers, 2 different purchase prices, 2 different rents. What are the ratios between those? Because in a lot of cases, let's say that the Turnkey Lite version can rent for $1,100, but you could get $1,500 with the turnkey version. Well, that seems obvious. You'd want turnkey, right? Well, maybe not, because what's that purchase price? That purchase price may have jumped because of the rehab to the point where even though you're getting more in rent, you're not cash flowing as much because of how much you had to pay for the property. Whereas the lower rent does cash flow more because the purchase price is lower in comparison. You see what I mean? So those are the 4 numbers that you want to look at when you're thinking about this option. Do I go turnkey or Turnkey Lite? What are the purchase prices of both? What are the rents on both? Cool. And don't forget, on the rent for the Turnkey Lite, if you decide to upgrade it over time, that rent will jump accordingly, all while still at the same purchase price. Yeah, you're paying for rehab, but again, what are those numbers and how do they compare? So the Turnkey Lite may or may not cash flow as high as the turnkey, but in a lot of cases, it might cash flow more. So yes, lower amount. And then you might be saying, well, but at $1,100, I might get a lower quality tenant than at $1,500. Well, throw that into your considerations. How low of a quality of tenant would it be? Is it such a big difference that it matters? I mean, if we're talking like $1,500 versus $500, yeah, all day long, it's going to be a huge difference in tenant quality. But $1,100 versus $1,500, or maybe those differences are only $1,200 versus $1,300 or $1,200 versus $1,400. See what the difference is. Look at it from the cash flow perspective and also consider the tenant quality. If it's not going to make that big of a difference, cool, go for it. Lastly, about the rehab. Well, if you buy this not 100% rehabbed property, what do you have to rehab it? What should your plan be? In my mind, there are 3 options for how you navigate the long term in the rehab of this property. Option number 1, you don't rehab it. Again, nothing's broken. All the CapEx items are replaced. Everything is perfectly functional. It's a rent-ready property. Okay, so never rehab it. Just keep renting it at the applicable rent amount and keep it clean and fix the little stuff as it happens. Great. Cool. No problem. Option number 2, upgrade it over time. So I actually manage a property that I own local to me in Los Angeles. It's a duplex. One of the units, when I bought it, was fully turnkey and ready to go, fully rehabbed. The other one, was exactly what I'm talking about. It was perfectly rent ready, but some things were outdated. The floors were looking a little old. The cabinets are a little bit old, but they're all clean and functional and no problem. Okay, great. But what I've been doing with that unit, between tenants, I'll do a little something. So before my last tenant in that unit, I completely remodeled the bathroom. That's not a little something, but it was one bathroom and I remodeled the whole thing. Well, guess what? Just that remodel allowed me to ask a little bit more in rent. It's a write-off on my taxes. It's an improvement. And hello, I'm that much closer to being rehabbed. Then, after the next tenant, the plan was to redo the floors. Or maybe I skip tenants, depending on how long the current tenant stays there. Let's assume I'm going to hold this property for 30 years. Rental properties are a long-term hold. Let's assume I'm going to hold it for 30 years. That's a lot of time to do like a step ladder kind of version of rehabbing. Again, if it's functional and rent ready, I don't have to do any of it now. I can just do it slowly over time. Great. And then option number 3 is if I get to the point of wanting to sell, I can do a full rehab at once. Also not a problem. Would I want to do that? I don't know. Maybe. Depends on my budget at the time. Am I trying to sell the property? What could I sell it for versus if I don't do it? You have that option. So either don't rehab it at all and just fix things as necessary. Do the step ladder version of rehabbing. Force your own appreciation slowly so it doesn't require that much out of your pocket right away. Or rehab it all yourself, either immediately or at the end of its life or somewhere in the middle. Who cares? It doesn't matter. You are in control of this. Cool. So, what do you think about Turnkey Lights? So I'm going to link to a video for you to see an actual Turnkey Lite property for sale so you can get a visual. And this one happens to have that dark red carpet that I was talking about. So also on the carpet, just know that if any of the carpet in other rooms is not, you can't save it. Either it can't be cleaned or it's ripped or whatever. They are going to replace it with the better floors. Cool. So check out that video so you can see an actual property, and then let me know what you think about this Turnkey Lite option. Because look, interest rates are going up. Turnkey providers are not being nearly as accommodating as they used to be. I was trying to think of a very nice word there. They're not being as accommodating as they used to be 10 years ago. So Turnkey Lite might be your perfect option where you're still getting everything done for you, all the important stuff done for you, but you're able to save a little money, get a house in a nicer neighborhood, and fix it up over time as you feel necessary or as you feel comfortable. That's it. Turnkey Lite. So you're still getting turnkey, everything's functional, no capex, no crazy stuff, but light. So it's a little outdated. Cool. Whatever. There you have it.